Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. And welcome to episode 269, When Your Dissertation is a Mess, Big Things. It's that time of year where we are starting to look at lots of dissertations from clients who are struggling for lots of different reasons. And so for the next three episodes, I will be focusing on a couple of things with dissertations to look at to just consider what is the problem. And we'll also talk about strategies that you can address the problem if you're working on a dissertation. If you're a dissertation supervisor or on a committee, these are also helpful to identify and use language for students to say, this is the thing that is the major problem here. If you yourself are struggling to articulate with a student about how to do this, or the student is just not understanding what you are saying to them. So these can be helpful for a lot of reasons. We will be doing 3 episodes in a row about dissertations and how to support them from either the student side supporting themselves or from the faculty developer side or graduate student side, and how we can provide support to those students. In addition, we'll also have some events coming up that we are titling Dissertation Rescue with a couple of different series. So I'll say something about that at the end. For this episode, here's 4 reasons why dissertations are a big mess. Number 1 is always, and this is the same with every client we see come through, but also for graduate students that I've supervised, if you are the dissertation writer, the problem might be that you haven't yet settled on a clear argument, a through line, a claim. And this could happen for a couple of reasons. It's totally possible to change your mind once you look at your data, once you look at the research that you're conducting. Maybe you're doing ethnographic research and then you read, some observation notes that kind of changed what you're doing. Sometimes your claim is just way too big. Your project is too ambitious. It's not really clear yet what the specific argument or claim is that you want to make. It could be that you just keep changing directions. So maybe one time you think your data is looking a certain way, but then you looked at it again and you're thinking, maybe no, I need to go in a different direction. And every time you change that, that's the hook that the whole project hangs on. So this would be the same with a scholarly article, a book manuscript. There's always some kind of goal that your project is driving towards. And if you're not totally sure what that is, all the other pieces are going to be in jeopardy. Because, for example, even something as simple or supposedly simple as a literature review doesn't really make sense if you're selecting sources that aren't really part of a conversation about what you say you're arguing. So that's always first. And sometimes you write a little bit, you work on your chapters, and then you revise that through line, that argument. One of the things that is a good piece of advice from longtime faculty developer Tara Gray, she advocates writing your thesis on the wall. And what she means by that is turning it into a sentence, your big, what is the overall argument of your dissertation, your book, your scholarly article, and taping it at the wall, putting it on, post-it, putting it somewhere where you can see it all the time, and you keep revising it. I will link to that episode in our show notes because I actually talk about that concept a little bit more. But that could be number 1. And so there are different ways to fix this problem because I don't want to just identify problems in this episode and not give any kind of advice about how to solve them. But there's a couple different ways that you could solve this one. One of the things that you could do is work backwards and look at your data. If you've gotten far enough to do, talk about methodology, you started working on a discussion, you've got results. If you're doing, say, a rhetorical analysis, you've done some of that, you might go back and look at the evidence you have and work backwards and say, what do I have here that could be supported? So sometimes that's not the most popular way to go because a lot of times you want to work more inductively where you're kind of figuring out what's going on. But I think this is also one that sometimes can help when you're just not sure what is happening. You can also do some matching where you say, all right, this is what I think I'm arguing, and this is what my evidence shows. Are these two things connected? Do these things go with each other? Do they correlate? So that's something that you can do. Another thing you could do is you can talk with your dissertation advisor or your supervisor, depending on your relationship, and check in and say, this is what I think my argument is. Do you think my project is supporting this argument? If you're far enough along to do that, that can be a good way to go. But another thing that you could do that I like if you're just really not sure, I would write it out as best you can in a sentence. And this is one of the times that I do like using an AI tool for just your one sentence. Write it out in one sentence and use AI tool of your choice and ask AI to rewrite that sentence a couple of different ways so you can see it written to you, maybe more clearly, which could help. But then also you can ask AI to help you with, you could have it ask you questions about that claim. What are some things that that claim suggests? What do you think, if you read that claim, might be showing up in a dissertation? So again, don't put your whole dissertation in there. Definitely no. Just one sentence that has your thesis or your through line written out. And you can also do this with a partner. So you could do this with another student working on a dissertation, preferably somebody that isn't familiar with your work. So if there's other kinds of dissertation support at your university where you can get together with other dissertation writers, you could do this for each other, because what you're trying to figure out is that a claim or an argument, it might show up in one sentence, it might show up in a couple of sentences, like kind of that are all paired together. But one of the things that has to happen is it has to be identifiable. So when someone reads your introductory chapter, they should know what is the main through line or the main claim that you're trying to make in the project. So getting feedback in that way could be a way to do that. So again, you're just working through and seeing if is it a language problem, which is why AI could help, or is it you really have not narrowed down enough what's happening. So again, you can ask AI even about scope. But it's also a reader question, right? So you can ask readers, either a dissertation supervisor, other dissertation writers, even AI, what does the claim that you're making imply? And see if that's actually the thing that you want to do. Because once you have that piece, that's the piece that you're writing towards the whole rest of the time during the dissertation process. You might refine it a little bit, but that's the thing that the rest of your project is trying to prove. And without it, it's difficult to write the other pieces. So sometimes people will say, well, I go back and refine that at the end. You can do that, but then you've spent an awful lot of time doing, maybe writing in a methodological explanation that doesn't necessarily help, or your discussion isn't really supporting what your claim is. So those are some things that you can do. On methodology topic, number two, sometimes is that you realize your methodology is not working. About half of the dissertation writers that we see that come to us at Defend, Publish, and Lead are students that have worked for a long time. They've either done experiments, they've done interview coding, they've done analyses, they've done ethnographic research, all kinds of things. And what they realize is that the methodology isn't really supporting what they're claiming, so it's not working that way. Maybe it's not working, period, for whatever reason. Like maybe they're not getting good findings from their interviews that will be helpful in any kind of a way. And there's a couple of things you can do here. If the methodology does not work at all, it completely failed. This is a conversation certainly with your dissertation supervisor, but it might mean that you have to get very realistic about your timeline, how much time you can afford to redesign another methodology. And of course, this is program specific. So let's say that's in worst case scenario when it completely blows up. What's more typical and why clients come to us is that your methodology sort of worked. It's not that it didn't work. It's that, for example, you wanted to make this claim about your interview data, but what you actually got from the interviews either proves something else. It only proves something very, kind of very surface level. You wanted something deeper. Maybe you have something that proves something with numbers, but you don't have any good quotations. There's a lot of reasons that a methodology could fail. It could also be that you realized you picked the wrong one. Like the one you have is okay, but you realize that there is another one that would have been way better, had you been able to do it. So a couple of things here. One of the things that I would consider is what can be used from the current project. Is it that your project now just has to be more limited, or you have to have a lot of hedging in it? One thing for hedging, like for example, you might have to say these are results that suggest something. Suggest is a hedging word. We do a writing series every week called Tuesday Toolbox. I will actually send a link to a Tuesday Toolbox video about hedging in our show notes. So that way you can see what I mean by that, because that's a way that maybe your methodology isn't great, but with some hedging, meaning some qualifiers on the methodology, you can use it and finish the project. Because the ultimate goal is that you want to finish a dissertation. So those are some ways that you can do it. Again, looking at if only part of a project or part of the methodology works, maybe that's what you're going to focus on the dissertation is just the part that worked. Also, scholars are interested in fails. So when something doesn't work, for example, or there might be something really interesting, like why did your interviewees not want to answer question number 3? That could be something that you could explore in a discussion even. So that's another thing to look at. But what you're trying to decide, your overall goal here is trying to figure out what is savable, if anything, and to see if you can conceptualize your project around that. It could be a discussion you need to have again with a dissertation supervisor if you're just honestly not sure. But sometimes it's important to realize not all methodologies work. So many of us who've published lots of books and articles, we've done lots of projects where a method has not worked the way we wanted to, or we realized another method might have worked better. Just because we might prefer another method now or see that maybe another one is better, that doesn't mean the one you have is incorrect. Because if we think about a dissertation, what we're trying to do here is contribute new knowledge. So I would look and see what's savable first before blowing up a whole dissertation. A third one, you haven't connected the overall narrative. And here's what I mean by this. We also see, not a lot of projects, but we see a fair number that will say, that will have this problem. And what I mean by this is that yes, it's a dissertation. Yes, it has 5 chapters or 6 or 7. But what is missing is the language that's connecting all the pieces together. So, for example, a really good indicator of this is if we review somebody's dissertation for them, we look at chapter 2, a lot of times that's the literature review. We'll look at it, and the literature review will come as a bit of a surprise. It's either not we don't really know why we're reading certain pieces of the background because it's not set up. We might see in the methodology chapter that the methodology and the study that is done has nothing to do with the literature that is presented in chapter 2. We might see a discussion that doesn't really talk about what was going on in the methods and also does not refer back to the literature. So overall, all of these pieces have to be together. And one of the things that we do with our individual coaching for anybody interested in working with us is we really pay attention to this. Because to me, this is the difference between a dissertation that could be a passable project, not great, passable, and a dissertation that actually has pieces that could potentially be published, either all together or as separate articles. So this is kind of the flavor that really needs to be in there. And a lot of it is some transitional language, but also some qualifying language. So for example, why was the methodology chosen? In the discussion, how does result number 4 connect to that thing you said in chapter 2 from that one source? So putting in those pieces to kind of get all of it to hold together as a consistent and a concrete type of project is worth it. Even if, and mostly if, you end up carving it up at the end. So no dissertations become books. Some books do come from a dissertation, usually with a lot of revision. And other dissertations, you might take one chapter out of it or one small piece of it and turn it into an article. So you do need the connection there for the dissertation. It's also helpful for a committee and it's very helpful at a defense actually because it answers a lot of questions. But without it in there, it shows that your project is very scattered and fragmented. And this is one of the reasons where a lot of graduate students writing dissertations get very overwhelmed because they feel like I'm not making any progress. I haven't built anything. Like it's not connecting. You're sensing this lack of connection. And again, these are all sentence level things that can be done. Sometimes it can be done with inserting some headings that explain, but a lot of times it's just transitional language, a sentence or two here or there throughout the different chapters connecting different parts of the dissertation. The last one is another problem that yeah, sometimes stems from writing, like writing issues, and sometimes not. But it is you keep starting. And what I mean by this is that we have lots of dissertation writers that tend to go in one of two lanes. In the first lane, we have people that work all the time. Any spare second, they're trying to open their dissertation, they're trying to do some writing on it. And so what happens is, yes, they have seen the dissertation a lot because they're in it all the time and they keep starting. But what happens is they tend to hyper focused because they're opening it all the time, they're looking at it all the time. They tend to hyper focus on things like sentence level issues, maybe rewriting sentences, worrying about a chapter title, maybe obsessing about how to make a table or how to describe a piece of evidence. The other group is the writers that go in spurts where you write a lot and then you don't do anything on it for 3 weeks. And then you maybe write, a weekend and then you work on it, maybe 4 months later. Some people are hiding out from their dissertations. Some of them don't want to work on them. You're just dreading it. You hate doing it. You're burned out. And so you write and then you go away for a while and take a break. This is also starting because every time you get to it, it looks new to you. And so a lot of your time is wasted sort of reorienting yourself to the project. So this is different than people that are in their dissertations all the time. They tend to get really picky and hyper focused on sentences and really minor things rather than looking at the big picture things that will get it finished. For example, refining an argument, paying attention to organization, developing claims, working on language that signals different things to the audience to make it audience friendly. So those students that tend to look at dissertations, every spare second, they're focusing on very little things that don't make the difference. Dissertation writers that avoid their dissertation or go kind of in binge or bust cycles where you write for a long time and then you don't do anything for weeks. The big problem here is that you just keep wasting time to reorient yourself to the project. And one of the dangers with that is that you could change your mind. So you could write a weekend, not write for 2 weeks, and then go back and look at it and say, I don't even know what I was thinking here, or I hate this. And then a lot of times it requires starting over, and it's just very slow. So we don't necessarily recommend writing every day, but we do recommend that you have contact with your project every 48 to 72 hours, so every 2 to 3 days, because longer than that requires a whole lot of your brain to get yourself back there. And as your dissertation keeps growing, it's getting bigger and it's hard to remember where all the pieces are. So in that vein of support, I mentioned that we're offering dissertation rescue sessions. So this is a new series that we're doing, and we're offering 3 sessions. We're recording this in February of 2026. March 10th, March 24th, and April 7th, we are going to focus on big things, little things, and your defense from 12 to 1 Eastern Time. All of these will be recorded. They're free. So all you have to do is register if you want to get the recording and all the tools and templates and free things. So you can register for those on Eventbrite, and we will put a link to Eventbrite in our show notes where you're able to find those sessions and register for one or all of them. Another thing that we are doing in our dissertation support series is we are offering a free hour of writing coaching to any dissertation writer and any dissertation supervisor. So you don't have to be together. So dissertation supervisors, if you've got some students that you're worried about or you're just really struggling with how to support somebody, you are welcome to contact us to get a free hour of coaching. And dissertation writers, we can help you. So in both cases, we can look at writing for an hour. We can look at it on screen together over Zoom or a meeting venue of your choice. We can also just do some troubleshooting with you over the phone and say, all right, what are some things you're struggling with? Here's some strategies. Because a lot of times the advice does have to be personal and specific. So you can email Christine at defendpublishedlead.com to get that free hour of coaching. So normally we do free 30-minute consultations, but for any dissertation writer or dissertation supervisor, just email us to set it up and we'll get you a free hour of coaching, no strings attached. Finally, in the interest of writing support, I've mentioned this before, but Textbook and Academic Authors Association is our only podcast sponsor. And I have mentioned the Textbook and Academic Authors Institute. It's a summer institute, June 12th and 13th. This thing is great because it's basically going to writing school for your writing, and you can learn about all different ways to strengthen your scholarly writing through these writing labs. And there's lots of really great sessions and keynotes. And this is very, very cheap. So one of the things that we've talked about with this membership, I love it because just like all university budgets, mine is super slashed as well. To attend this institute in the summer, if you are a member of Textbook and Academic Authors Association, it is $125. And if you're a non-member, it's only $150. So for 2 days, all the writing support, and they only take 100 people. So this would be one, if you want a seat, I would encourage you to register for it. Also, know that you can join Textbook and Academic Authors Association for just $25. So if you want to, you could actually join them and then register for the Institute, and you would have the support of the association all year long. They do free webinars every month. They have tons of free templates. I use this all the time. They have grants that you can apply for. There are book awards you can apply for. So hands down, my total favorite organization, but I would encourage you to think about that. And if you are a graduate student, there is a graduate student discount. So if you register for it, it is only $75 for you. And for if you are a member of TAA, and if you're not, it's only $100. So for 2 days of learning how to do a lot of different things with writing and listening to a really good keynote on AI and writing, I think it's worth it if you're able to grab one of those seats before they're gone. So if you have any questions about that, you can also email me at Christine at Defend Publish Lead, and happy writing this week.